Good morning. There was fairly torrential rain all day yesterday, and it's not actually that much better today. Indeed, the forecast for the next week is rain every day, so it's all pretty horrible. I could just sit here, I suppose, but I wouldn't mind popping to a supermarket for a few more essentials. Also, it's been so overcast that my solar has been only delivering about half of what I need per day, so I'll need to run the engine at some point anyway. It might as well be while I'm on the move. As you can see, I've got the hat on. I've also put on my waterproof over trousers, and supposedly it's going to be merely overcast and less rain as the day wears on, so I'm going to take the gamble and set out. Now if it does chuck it down, of course, that will limit the amount of filming I can do on this handheld camera because it's not waterproof, but I'll still have the shots from the one in the bow. You may notice I'm not setting off from the same place I left you. That's because I was buzzed by a masked youth on a motorbike going up and down the towpath a couple of times, so I shifted the boat 1.5 miles further along, opposite these moorings. It always feels safer in the company of other boats. To get to the other side of Middlewich is about 4 miles and 9 locks, one of which, rather oddly, is a wide lock, even though it's a narrow canal. Some historical oddity, I think. And that will put me on the other side, and hopefully there'll be somewhere to moor up there. In the gently drizzling rain, I came to the first lock of the day. It wasn't set my way, so I had to wait while it filled. With the skies still grey, but slightly clearing, I go past a new housing estate, so new that Google Maps shows the site as a solid concrete wasteland. They've named the estate after the next lock, I notice. And here it is. Thankfully, the rain has stopped. I don't like doing locks solo in the rain because they can be slippery. I don't really want to fall in without anyone around to rescue me. Some friendly holiday makers were at the next lock. Fine by me. It means the lock's set ready for my descent, and they'll open the gates too. 3 locks down and about only half a mile of travel. That's taken me an hour so far, so slow going. I normally estimate about 15 minutes for a single lock, but clearly those were taking me about 20. There's now a shortish stretch, 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles, until we get to the King's Lock, and that is right in the middle of Middlewich. On the right hand side there should be a chandlery, and on the left hand side reputedly a very good fish and chip shop. Unfortunately, I'd miscalculated the number of locks and merrily thought I was now on the final approach, but it turned out to be a bit further. This is the outskirts of the town, a massive industrial complex on the right. I had no idea what it was, but have since discovered it's the British Salt Works. You often find towns with a salt connection have the "wich" ending to their name, as in Middlewich, as well as Nantwich and Northwich, all of which are near this area. Then there's the proof, a massive pile of salt just ready for that chip shop a bit further along. This is the lock I hadn't banked on. Don't know how I missed it, but another boat coming up had left it filled, so that saves me a bit of effort. On the approach into Middlewich proper now, and classic 1930s English houses along the road. Visitor moorings on the port side, that's left if you're a landlubber, private moorings to starboard. At the end, the famous King's Lock. Inevitably, there's a pub on the lock with an equally inevitable name. Opposite, there's the Chippy. Once down, you find the King's Lock Chandlery to one side, with an array of boater services. I would have stopped to buy some bits here, but all their mooring spots were full. It's here that the Trent and Mersey joins the Middlewich branch of the Shropshire Union Canal, under that bridge to the left. Strictly speaking, the first 100 yards to the lock is the Wardle Canal, then it becomes the Middlewich branch, but who's counting? Now hang on, this boat looks familiar. If you're a subscriber to the Cutting Edge Narrowboat Adventures, a link to which is in the video description, then you'll definitely know it. It's been fitted out from a bare shell and all documented on YouTube. Unfortunately, no sign of the owners today. Yes, I definitely recognise that conservatory from Claire's Pieces to Camera. Through another bridge and you go past Middlewich narrowboats. It's a tiny bit cramped going through here, but luckily for me, no one was coming the other way. If you can find space to stop, they have tea rooms. A challenging little set of 3 locks in quick succession now. The first is easy enough, but the next is round a sharp bend, and I had another problem with it too, which I'll come to in a second. The first issue is getting out. As mentioned before, narrowboats pivot in the middle, so as you try to swing the front round to the left, the back of the boat tries to go right, and if it's stopped because the back is still in the lock, the front won't turn. But you need to turn because it's a 90-degree left. So you have to come fully out of the lock, apply as much hard right tiller as you can, and scrape the back round to get the front pointing in the right direction. There is enough space, I am perhaps exaggerating, but it's probably not one for beginners. Immediately you pull up on the left for the next lock. And as a point of interest, there's a dry dock immediately behind you on the corner. At this point, I let the water into the next lock, filling it so I can go down. So far, so normal. But the water to do that is coming from the tiny pound the boat is currently sitting in, and that meant its level dropped by, a couple of inches. It shouldn't normally be an issue, but watch closely and you can just spot that the boat stops rocking or moving, because as the level went down by just that little bit, the boat caught on a protruding underwater ledge at the edge of the pound. And I noticed that the boat was leaning alarmingly to the right, and even went to check from the middle of the gate. The trouble is, with the boat base plate sitting on a ledge, that side of the boat is not floating, so I've essentially now got to push 15 tons of metal back into the water. It nearly didn't go, and I would have had to let extra water in from the lock above, but after a bit of frantic rocking, suddenly it slid sideways. Goodness only knows what damage that's done to the underside. I'm down 9 of the locks, and now I just need to find somewhere to moor. I don't think I'm going to be able to. It looks quite busy, but I want to go to the shops. This spot looked promising until I noticed the faded private mooring signs. Past the water point, which this hire boat is sitting on and not actually using. Round the corner though, and whilst it's not the most glamorous spot, these visitor moorings are well placed for a supermarket, and as it happens, the local library, which I used for a bit of printing. Thank you, Middlewich Library. Shopping done, I moved off, because I'm always wary of mooring in towns. This all looks very civilised, but you never know what it'll be like after dark. A children's playground on the left seems innocuous enough, but they're always targets for vandals, aren't they? Anyway, I decided to shift into the countryside again. But first, that final lock, and a classic example by me of how not to moor up behind the boat you're going to lock down with. A gentle bump, but embarrassing nonetheless. So into Middlewich Big Lock, which is wide for historical reasons, even though you can only get narrowboats here, but it's not that deep. Out of the lock, and the obligatory swans with babies image. All very hungry by the looks of things. Another promising looking mooring spot turned out to be permit holders only again. So I went across Croxton Aqueduct, which was once suitable for wide beams but was rebuilt narrow, hence why the wide lock is now an oddity. At last, here's a place I can tie up for a tranquil night. That's it for now. Cheerio.